BookTube, and welcome to a new video. This is going to be a tag video, or rather two tags rolled into one, because Jim over at Jim's Books Reading and Stuff is doing original tags, one per letter of the alphabet, and I caught up on 4 today and cherry picked the 2 which seemed the most applicable to the type of stuff I read and could therefore answer. So I'm going to do the F tag and the I tag. So the F tag first. Prompts. F is for France. Who is your favourite French author? This is an impossible question for me to answer. I love so many French writers. So, you know, absolutely formative in my reading was Camus, to a lesser extent Sartre. Since then I've big fan of Houellebecq. Laurent Binet's first 2 books are amongst my all-time favourites. Unfortunately, this year's release, his 3rd book, called Civilizations, was not up to the level. So I need to monitor his future output to see whether I can put him in the pantheon of the Houellebecqs and the Camus and the likes of that. There's Matthias Enard, whose works all appear on Fitzcarraldo in the UK. So there's just lots of them. So I love French literature. And even David Diop's Man Booker International winning At Night All Blood is Black. I mean, that was superb. Not that I've read anything else by him. So I can't answer the question, but not for lack of candidates. F is for fiction. Approximately what percentage of your reading is fiction? I can answer this exactly. It's been a steady percentage over the last 2 years. When I do my review of the year, I give stats, so I know exactly what the proportion of fiction to non-fiction is. And as I say, it stayed fairly steady. It's 18% non-fiction, 82% fiction. And to be honest, the non-fiction is always bumped up by non-fiction November. F is for fantasy. Who's your favourite fantasy author? Well, J.T. Leroy, perpetrator of a literary fraud. That's all I'm going to say. There's a documentary, or there was a BBC documentary on it. F is for 5 stars. How many books have been 5-star reads for you this year? Again, I can answer this exactly, because in my mid-year freak-out book tag, I did the stats. At that time, to the end of June, it was 23 5-star books out of a total of 60 books. I've since read 1 more, so it's 24. F is for funny. Funny has 2 meanings. What book did you find both funny peculiar and funny ha-ha? Well, let's start with funny ha-ha. There's sort of 2 or 3 books I consistently offer for this type of question. One is A Fraction of the Whole by Australian author Steve Toltz, which is very witty and biting and sardonic. One is Karoo by Steve Tessick, which unfortunately was the only book he wrote because he died after it. His career was mainly in film production, and this is a book set in that world, and it's very funny, a laugh on every page. So they're the 2 I would offer. Recently I've read Percival Everett by Virgil Russell, although Percival Everett is actually the real author. Virgil Russell is a combination of Bertrand Russell and Virgil, the guy who is the guide in is Dante's guide. That was sort of had quite a lot of humour in it as well. As to funny peculiar, I think the easiest answer I could give to this is I will post the link to the F'd Up book tag, which is originated by Daniel at Guilty Feet, because I talk a lot about funny peculiar in the sense of being F'd up books. F is for Fight Club and film adaptation. What book and film adaptation both merited 5 stars in your opinion? Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, which takes as its inspiration Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but moves the action from Africa to the Mekong Delta during the Vietnam War. So probably not a strict adaptation, but that's as close as I'm ever going to get to one. F is for Frida. This is a chance to show off your furry friends. I don't have any unless you count my William Burroughs felt puppet, hand puppet, which I've showed in other videos and forgot to prepare and get in for this video. F is for flower. What is the last book you read with the name of a flower in the title? Okay, so do we count trees as flowers? Because I read Tree of Smoke by Dennis Johnson this year, one of my mammoths, clocking in about 640 pages. If we don't count a tree as a flower, then I actually went back into my Goodreads to see, because if a book has a flower's name in the title, I'm unlikely to pick it up to read it at all. But I did find one from 2019 that I read. It wasn't published then, and it was Belladonna by Dasa Drindich. If it's a flash fiction, what are your thoughts or experiences of this medium? It's kind of an open goal for me because I've published 5 collections of flash fiction, so I'm a big fan. Although I will say, I think its time might be over in terms of sort of fresh output. I know there's a National Flash Fiction Day which happens in mid-June in the UK. I don't follow it, so I don't know kind of how much life and energy it had in it this year. But I just get the sense that it was the thing of its time where you could read a whole story on the screen of your phone without having to scroll down, which is obviously very advantageous. I just think that's past now, because people are watching videos rather. I mean, obviously people are still reading on their screens, but they're reading, you know, subscriptions to news sites rather than fiction. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it, and I would always defend it because I think it offers a lot to the author to do things very differently. But I just wonder if its moment has passed. And if it's a fire, this is the bonus question. If it's a fire, is there a better book about book burning than Farenheit 451? I've not read one, but coincidentally, I will offer the cover of my new book out in 5 days' time, 6 days' time. You can see it here, where you can see there is book burning going on. Although I don't think there's direct book burning referred to in any of the contents of the book. It was more the overarching symbol of what the book was about. So that was the F tag, and now on to the I tag. I is for immunity and inoculation. Have you been vaccinated yet? I've had both vaccinations, AstraZeneca in the UK. Unfortunately, though, my sons, who are away at university and living in a shared house in Brighton, one of their housemates has caught COVID. We think from his night shifts at a depot of a supermarket. So my sons are isolating, and one of them has reported not feeling well. Although he's taken 2 self-administered tests, they both come back negative, but it's too much of a coincidence, and I'm rather afraid that he is going to come down with it. I is for Iago. Who is the most sinister villain in your reading and why? I never think in terms of villains and goodies and heroes. I don't like the concept of hero. I don't like books that are set up as heroes versus villains. It's too simplistic, too archetypical for me. I don't believe in the concept of evil being outside of the human psyche. I think we have to take responsibility for bad acts and bad behaviour, and not externalise it onto a devil or a bogeyman or whatever. So it's not a concept that I really deal in. But I will say I studied Othello at school for A level, and Iago was always discussed in terms of he is the most villainous of all Shakespeare's villains, but actually the least accessible and satisfying, because we don't know what makes him tick. He is so villainous, he is so sort of reflexively evil, that we never really get any idea of motive. He's too impenetrable. I'd like to say Edmund in Lear, which I also studied for A level. So that's my contribution to this question. Eyes for Italy. What is the last book you read by an Italian author? Book number 6 I've read this year by the same author, Leonardo Sciascia, To Each His Own. And very good it is too. Eyes for Eyes for Ireland. Who is your favourite Irish author? Well, my favourite Irish author is for his plays, which is Samuel Beckett. I'm struggling with his fiction. I haven't completed Joyce's Ulysses yet, so I can't definitively say it's him, although so far I absolutely appreciate everything he does within Ulysses, at least the parts that I've read. So I don't really have a favourite Irish author, although I will say I so enjoyed Danny Denton's debut novel, The Early King and the Kid in Yellow. But he's only written 1 book. It's about time that we have a follow-up. So I can't say he's my favourite, but that was superb. I really enjoyed that. And equally, this is a debut novel by Niall Bourke called Line, which I've just read. Although Bourke has relocated to London, this is superb as well. So, you know, I don't have a favourite. I will say I do not like Irish whimsy, though. I read The Third Policeman and absolutely hated it. I read Sloot, who's by the author who I now can't remember, and hated it. I just don't do whimsy, and the Irish do whimsy really, really well, but it's just something I don't cope with at all. Which closes off a sort of a section of Irish fiction, I think. I is for ink. Do you have any tattoos? I don't. What do you think of tattoos? I've always wanted one in my head. My favourite band, I said know about, have a band logo, which is sort of based on a Buddhist symbol. And I've always wanted that on my shoulder blade, but I'm too squeamish to have it. So it's only ever theoretical. And I ought to say that in my 2009 novel A.B.&.E., there's quite a long riff on piercings and tattoos by the protagonist character, who is on the holiday island of Kavos. She's a bit older, she's in her 40s, but she's observing British youth, the stags and hens and Club 1830 tourists, who are all obviously tattooed up and pierced as well. And she riffs on her thoughts on that in what I would hope is quite an entertaining way. Now, whether deep down those are my thoughts, you'll have to decide for yourself. I is for inspiration. What book inspired you to do something? Well, this is an unfortunate tale. It's happened to me several times where books I've hated have inspired me to sit down the very next day and write through my anger, and partly in response to what I've read. So one example of that would be I read Charlie Melville's Kraken, almost threw it across the room in disgust. It was a time when I was reading a lot of chat room stuff about why is Charlie Melville never nominated for literary book prizes. And it's true that he has all the abilities to be a literary writer as well as a genre writer that he is. And indeed, I think he put them together in a later novel called Embassy Town. But Kraken was not an example of his literary skills being meshed with genre. And I sat down literally the very next day to write a literary genre novel to see if it could be done. Or to see if I could do it at least, I suppose. And, you know, literally no notes, no preparation. Obviously some of the ideas were swimming around in my head anyway, they just hadn't found a home. And it happened to be around the first week of November, so I was shadowing, not formally participating in Write a Novel in November, NaNoWriMo, or whatever it's called. And by the end of the Christmas holidays, the end of December, I had the first draft of my book, you know, fueled by my fury at Kraken and the notion that, you know, Melville was deserving of literary prizes. And I've written short stories and flash also in response to being outraged, sometimes by things I've read, but other times by stuff in the news. So inspired, depends how you define inspired, I suppose. I for Istanbul. Which city or cities would you like to see before you die, and why? I have been to Istanbul. When I was growing up, my parents had Turkish friends, and I had the great privilege of going to Istanbul when I was quite young. And we were there for a long time, and we were also on an island, Turkish island, where they actually lived proper in the summer when everything shut down in their business. And we were there for probably a good month, so I was exposed to Turkish culture for a good while. But now I don't travel. I don't go on planes ever since 9/11, really. And yes, I know that's highly irrational and greater chance of being run over or dying in a car crash, but I don't drive either. But I don't. So the one place on earth I would like to see is not a city, actually. It's the temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which is in the countryside and was reclaimed from the forest, which had... sorry, not the forest, the jungle, which had reclaimed it when it was abandoned, when its water supplies failed. I think it's something like the 14th or 15th century. I would like to see that. I visited it online, which of course is not the same. But I will not be visiting it because, as I say, I will not get on a plane and it's too far to walk or hitch a lift. I, so many book titles. What is the last book you read beginning with an I? It was In the Heart of the Country, a short story collection by William Gass. So there you have it. Two of Jim is letter tags, the letter F and the letter I. Big thanks to Jim, and I'm very supportive of him getting all the way through the alphabet, although X and Z might be a challenge. Although I do have an author beginning with Z. I have two authors beginning with Z and a book title beginning with Z. But to be able to do that range of questions that we've just done for these, for Z, good luck with that. So, till next time, thanks very much.